As many of you might or might not know, World of Warcraft has many quote-unquote clones of varying degrees of competence behind the developers publishing them. They're great in the sense that they can offer a new experience in a familiar world that many people all hold near and dear to the heart. Our teenage years long past. We've seen multiple closures and Blizzard enforcing cease and desist to previous projects like Nostalgia's, which offered a good, solid, stable, and populated vanilla experience, long before Blizzard released its own classic servers, just to name the biggest one. Some even offered content in the form of custom content that could be along the lines of custom-made items, encounters, spells, and everything you can imagine. It's even possible to put layered items and spell visuals into an older World of Warcraft version, ultimately keeping the essence of Wrath of the Lich King, for example, while also dividing content in the form of appearances from expansions way past its lifespan. But since Nostalgia's, there have been multiple popular projects in the private server sphere that cross towards the goal of being the biggest and most stable experience you can get. Those would be Turtle WoW, Warmane, Retro WoW, and Tory WoW. But none of those are the ones we're going to be talking about today. There's one project that looms over all of these, establishing itself as the self-proclaimed best project that I saw on the market. You might have already seen it in the thumbnail, but yeah, we're of course talking about Ascension.
Bro, this is gonna be one of those games where it's gonna scream so loud.
Ascension is a project that got teased by developers of another project named Caustic WoW. It was a server I actually played on, where they had made their own custom classes like Demon Hunter, before even retail did it, and another one in the works, Invoker. By any means, it was a server that was well made and a lot of effort was put into it, considering the landscape of how custom servers were back in the day. Little by little did they begin to tease their awakening realms that would promise a true classless experience, making you able to mix and match abilities from all classes, creating your very own hero. When it released in 2017, it was instantly flooded with interested people truly wanting to experience a new project with a seemingly professional dev team that went above and beyond to deliver a good experience. Over time, they added their own custom content in the form of items, spells, systems like prestiging, transmog, challenges, new difficulties to raids and dungeons, and so many other things. It was truly out of this world how the team could create and iterate upon the systems of the day or the game had in place. They began hosting alternative realms by the likes of Leagues, which is an accelerated progress realm with experimental gameplay systems with rewards to boot for participating. This evolved into doing seasonal realms. They had a different progression model and a different way to evolve your character to boot. This was most commonly in the form of wildcard or draft. Wildcard is where you get a random ability or talent whenever you hit a certain level prerequisite, and draft was kind of in the same way, but you could choose between 3 abilities or talents instead. The seasonal realms have always been a good way for Ascension to test new systems or even explore new ideas that could potentially be implemented on the main realm, Area 52. Now that you know the basic information to understand who and what Ascension is, I'll keep things brief for now so I don't go into every little minute detail since it's, for the most part, irrelevant to the topic of the video. With Ascension, they've always had a knack of making everything they do feel premium, for lack of a better word. It's wildly obvious that they invest time into their exterior to look good and set themselves apart from other projects that use the same website template to death, which in turn made it look amateur. They strive to have an official service feel, and this is evident in how they convene with the player base too, how the changelogs are, their updates, and how things are organized. I believe that yes, both having a solid exterior can and will attract players that are tired of the same boilerplate template, having a launcher, and even having multiple promising projects under the wing have amassed the player base that they have now. This, in turn, also means there is many more eyes and opinions on the project and how they operate as a whole. Naturally, there will be critique of everything they do, be it balancing or how they monetize themselves. Now, the current time. Season 9. With this season, it's wildcard. The Mystic entrants that acts as their own way of integrating custom playstyles have been split to their own independent abilities and talents. This effectively means that there's a huge, and I mean huge amount of abilities and talents now stripped from their confines and able to be integrated independently on its own in your build. It's met with roaring fanfare like, this is what true crisis is. There's so much potential to create wacky or even broken builds that is by and large hard to replicate because of the nature of Wildcard. If you were not happy with how you rolled on the first go round, you could either Prestige, which is starting from 1, but you keep everything like items, rounds, really everything besides your spells and levels. Either that or doing your dailies to farm Master Ascension that can be used to buy reroll scrolls to randomly switch out one of your abilities by a challenge to something else. Problem 1. This basically culminated into people endlessly prestiging every day for hours on end. The most common way to do it was literally go into battlegrounds, hope you get overpowered teammates or abilities for RNG so you could win and gain a lot of experience. Of course, this was most commonly coupled with an automatic experience, which, to be fair, only one person needed it in the battlegrounds group for it to apply to everyone, so your best bet was being a leech and a potion of experience. Problem 2. Master Ascension was heavily gated behind doing daily and weekly quests from the call board. That in essence works just like doing your dailies in any other live service game. Early on, you were able to just do the same quest over and over again, which counted to the overall amount of daily quests you could do. This made it effortlessly easy to do and not an inconvenience. Although, they removed the ability to do that. Now you have to do every single, which is an average of 5 to 7 different ones, independently from each other. Hindering what should be in practice not take a lot of time, take a lot of time. Some of the areas where the daily quests are riddled with spawn rate that does not support how fast you can clear it, or the area is just simply too small for a bunch of people to find them. It's actually just making it worse. What once was a fast endeavor turned into a slog. Problem 3. There was no other effective way to find Master Ascension. Sure, doing other activities gave you some, but it was absolutely filthy how little you got compared to the dailies and the cost of buying scrolls. Not to mention, early in the season it was absolutely horrible to roll the build you wanted to. There was no safeguard to make it easier. This could mean that you could spend 12,000 scrolls and still not have rolled your build. Max price for one ability and 2 talent scrolls was 3,000 marks. Dailies were the full recursive counter, which was 7 per quest, what net you 300k to 400k. You do the math. With all that said, it was incredibly hard to practically replicate someone else's build, which, in theory, is a good thing. You can stand out, do your own thing. The only problem with that is doing group content and the form of rage, even PvP too. Because of unintended modifiers to an ability or talent, or because someone actually managed to roll a cohesive and highly performed build, meant that both gatekeeping and balancing was a nightmare. People needed to roll these both too to overcome different avenues, like as before stated, rage. At first, it was hard to gauge what the limits were, since it was that hard to compile a cohesive build, micromanaging what you got and having to commit a lot of resources to something that might just, in the end, be awful. And one words is all I can describe it as, people figuring out what worked and what was just downright broken. It became apparent pretty fast what could be attained on this playground through the damage meter. For the most part, you would see people doing 4 just 6k, and that was something I thought made sense, but slowly trickled in players who had achieved a whopping 20k and more. This was in molten core, mind you. These were realistically, from previous standpoint, mid-TDC numbers. Evidently, there was more to how you could make it build, figuratively speaking, abuse modifiers to talents or abilities, or new things that interacted weirdly with another. Over time, there were, of course, rounds of nerfs and fixes to the worst offenders. Some were downright gutted, some were changed, some were left puzzlingly unscathed. Later down the line, they introduced increased ways to earn scrolls and marks to reroll your build, as well as rails for the Warcraft system. You could no longer roll the same ability in 50 rolls. By luck, any of your current rolls could make a synergy roll that correlates to any abilities and talents that you had. Even later, they introduced a whole new way to reset your build: salting. After public outcry of people spending countless hours working and perfecting a build, only for it to burn to the ground by a measly number change, was rectified. If your build possessed any ability or talent that was nerfed recently, it did not count if you rolled it in 24 hours of said change being implemented. You could reset your spec, get your scores back, without going back to one, for completely free. This change was needed, considering the volatility of balance on Season 9s, but it ultimately killed prestiging as a whole. People now just wait for one thing to connect in their builds and then reset it for free and roll another build. With now a consistent outlet of experimentation for salting, it was easier to mind some and try builds with little repercussions. This had dire consequences to balancing as a whole. With a new system introduced to raids called raid trials, its purpose was challenging the raids but with higher modifiers, boss damage, boss health, mount damage, and lower healing down from healers in your party. Again, a system like this is good. More challenging content that you get rewarded for is overall good for the health of the game, right? In theory, yes. What with how Season 9 is, it promoted the ping-pong relationship of people jumping onto an overperforming build, it gets nerfed, onto the next overperforming build, it gets nerfed, and you know the rest. It eventually bled into how they balance the content itself too. Absurd damage numbers, chaotic and involved mechanics were simply close to impossible. Even the mods between the bosses was just, for lack of a better word, unfair. Mechanics you could in no way control would one-shot the DPS or healers with a big overkill of damage on each instance. If you can't realistically counter it, then what are you supposed to do? It really does demand the cutting-edge builds, which as stated before was gatekept and people relied on looking at the DPS meters to somehow piece it together. But furthermore, what made it especially unfun was the notion of having to play certain things. Sure, meta is a thing, but imagine if on retail people were forced to play Fast Mage because it did 700k compared to everything else doing 300k. Regardless of utility. No, you are not invited if you did not play Fast Mage. Simple as. It's a toxic environment, even more so coupled with many other issues lying underneath the surface. Throughout the whole season, there's been countless times where some builds get a justifiable nerf, but a lot of the time, it's really just casting buffs and nerfs to archetypes that in no way, shape, or form under or overperform so wildly. Sometimes they let a build knowingly go unchecked with high performance because it's the crux to even tackle the previously mentioned trials. Builds that overperform about the rest so arrogantly that you have no choice but to roll it for the sake of chasing the results. Having been there from the start and seeing this time and time again, it's disheartening. It doesn't encourage what they were preaching of playing the game your own way. It only breeds toxicity and burnout with people dropping out of all activities because it's exhausting to always be at a whim's notice, get either nullified or forced to play something they don't want to even tackle the content they care about. It's one thing to have a meta, it's another to only have realistically two choices that are valid. With an ocean's worth of abilities and talent, there's so many more rewarding playstyles that give you some love, niche spells performing bad, because there's simply not enough support for it, or downright some just don't have the numbers. It's disheartening, and I truly do want to support all the content they give to us, but it's hard to justify it when they make it so hard to do so. They have tried to reach out to high-end ways before, which included a Discord server of its own, where people could discuss the balancing of raids and trials as a whole. Again, good in theory, but has devolved into the top-end guild echo chamber of yes man. No, I'm not saying they're bad players, but with countless interactions, it's very clear that if you even try to suggest anything, you'll be jumped by the whole pack. It's happened before, where other people from different guilds have been suggesting a change for a raid for a long time, but when one from the top end suggests the exact same thing, it will be implemented in a matter of days. This is not how you balance at all. No one, and I mean, no other MMO developer takes a top-end raider suggestion and without hesitation implements it. Sometimes these changes also mean something will get harder. This is of course suggested after they have done the content itself, essentially making it harder for everyone else. Complete disregard to anyone else. Others have been challenging this before, but saying to the answer just that you build accordingly, disregarding that to survive the mechanic you shouldn't be forced to take a tank stance. Yes, this means DPS and healers too. I will not understand how this in any way is intuitive design, at all. I get being forced to get defensive cooldowns or changing your build to better fit a specific encounter, that's fine. But resorting to cheap solutions for hard and opportune mechanics is boring, not fun, and would in no way, shape, or form take place in any other game. But, personal ranting aside, there's something else to rant about.
Let's go! More complaining?
With Season 9 and the explosive surge of new players that attracted, it paved the path for new ways the developers could take advantage of it. With more people, it meant more the chance to monetize the project in various ways. It became very apparent early on that the developers knew this. They began working on adding more and more cosmetic sets and items to the web store and the bazaar. The bazaar is basically a rotating shop of cosmetics refreshing anywhere from 30 to 60 minutes where you can spend bazaar tokens, which you of course had to buy on the web store. at a rate not seen before in any previous seasons. There's nothing inherently malicious about this. It's a free server, so they had to monetize it in some type of way to keep the lights on. But over time, they began cranking the prices up on newly released items to the degree of people eventually complaining about it. They began to run weeks-long discounts on the biggest Beside token package there is, which also serves as a currency for instantly completing your daily quests and a parallel currency to grow in trading. You'd think this is actually a good thing. People can now get what they want, right? Well, yeah, the Beside tokens being able to be put on auction house and be traded was the kicker. This vastly the economy to be so volatile and hit highs that could be only compared to the end of a season. Everything became more expensive, while the source of growth from the world remained the same, untouched in an economy that was spiraling down the highway to insane heights. What's the deal anyway? How much real money are we talking about here? So, in order to buy stuff on the web store, you had to buy donation points to actually buy the items themselves. This is not anything new in terms of private servers. You can buy donation points in varying quantities, going from 3 DP per 1 USD all the way up to 1,500 DP per 500 USD. What did the discounted Beside token package cost? 48 DP. For exactly 15 USD, you can get 48 donation points. That's really not too bad, eh? You get 2,660 Beside tokens from the discounted package. How much does something cost on the Beside? Well, it varies. All the items considered trash are anywhere from 200 to 1,500. What about the juicy stuff, the nice looking downported items and such from later expansions? Again, it varies. The common price for a set is 3,200 tokens. A good chunk of Legion's artifact appearances sell for 3,500. Some other weapons sell for 4,000. Some sets will set you a whopping 4,800 back. They also have mounts on there, which also have varying degrees of price range. Some are just 3,000 and can go all the way up to 9,600. Yes, 9,600. Now, let's break it down. To get 9,600 tokens, you would need to buy at least 4 of the biggest package. Yes, they have smaller packages, but with the biggest one being on a 32% discount, that means it's cheaper than the previous package, which sets at 50 DP for 1,350 tokens, which even then is not enough to buy them home if you bought 3 at the biggest one and want to save money. That equates to 60 USD, just for the amount alone. Mind you, this was taken into account of the discount in place. If it wasn't discounted, it would be 3 of the biggest package, which would be 300 DP, and 7,980 tokens. Then you would need 1 of the 50 DP packages, which would get you 1,350 tokens, which comes out to be 9,330 tokens in total. And finally, you would need the last package to avoid discount, which would be the 15 DP one. That gives you 321 tokens, which would total you at 9,651 tokens at 365 DP in total spent. To hit that amount of donation points, you would realistically be buying the 300 DP package that on top gives you 25 DP, so 325, which is 100 USD. Then you would probably go for the 15 USD package that gives you 45 DP with 3 on top, which is 48. This totals you to 373 DP in total at a cost of 115 USD. Alternatively, you could shave some cost out by buying the 30 DP package for 10 USD instead of the 15 USD one, and then buy 4 of the small 3 DP packages at 1 USD to finally get 367 DP at the cost of 114 USD. You can apply this logic to everything available on both the store and the in-game bazaar. Granted, all the stuff you can buy on both is available to be sold on the auction house and traded. This means that you can farm in-game gold to eventually get that shiny new set. I'll keep this short. If you intend to do it this way, you're forced to go into open world high risk, which is the open world opt-in for PvP, which makes monsters and gathering nodes drop high risk materials that is used for rare and epic consumables. Different zones have tiers, with which there is 3 that comes with increasing detriment should you be killed by another player. When you die, you'll drop items and gold from your bag that they can loot. By default, you will have the gear you have equipped and shared, so it can't be dropped, but at the cost of a hefty sum of gold being paid to the one who kills you. This amount varies from tier to tier. This looks back to the previous topic, which was balancing. PvP is riddled with people abusing abilities and talents that has incorrect and overtuned modifiers to players. Sometimes you won't even be able to react accordingly to a gank, because you simply will just die very fast. Early in the season, I did make my goal this way, where I achieved 100k earned by the end of it, but the reasons I will later divulge into, it just seemed pointless to do this to begin with. I think where I'm going with this whole segment is, I realize how easy it is for the developers to add the cosmetics they sell. Not to mention that by any means, it is effectively stealing an asset from Blizzard and then selling these at exorbitant prices compared to the actual effort put into adding them. It really is just a job of copy and paste, minus some exceptions where textures need to be fixed accordingly, but that's likely an issue to begin with. Then, when you have added the models and textures of said item or model, you just need to create an entry of an item in the database that utilizes the model. It really is that easy. I challenge you to try this out by making use of Trinity Core and working with patches and models from later expansions. I cannot in good faith support this business practice, especially when for the most part they charge prices equal to a full game that will net you way more for your money for just cosmetic stuff that they didn't even make themselves. It's far beyond my comprehension how this in any way is supposed to be a good way to support the developers, when it's so apparent that it's driven by greed. I failed to mention that I also saw hats for processes that make processing and doing them faster, large inventory bags that cannot be attained in game outside of buying them, a squish knife that stores your tools for professions so you don't clog up your inventory with profession tools, stone to retreat that acts as a quick teleport to a specific location, portable callboards so you don't have to go back to your main city to turn in dailies, pets that can act as a portable bank, pets that will AoE loot for you, pets that will level up your skills, pets that will learn your new recipes for professions, pets that can repair your gear, pets that can act as a quest giver for the dungeon you're in, codex to unlock more stats for professions, scrolls to max a single profession, portable handle and storage, portable mailbox, item that lets you choose your starting zone, item that unlocks all the flight paths in Azeroth, item that unlocks all the flight paths in Outland, riding tomes for every level, apprentice, journeyman, expert flying, artisan flying, and extraordinary flying. Heirloom gear of all types. Those just to name the worst offenders.
Can't take this bottle home. I'd be sitting on it before we.
Ascension has multiple projects under its wings, which namely would be Conquest of Azeroth, which is a reimagination of new lore-accurate custom classes instead of the original 9, where it can be a Chronomancer, Barbarian, Blood Mage, Witch Doctor, Pyromancer, Venomancer, Knight of Soroth, and a Necromancer, just to name a few. Alpha test servers of the Wrath of the Lich King expansion and the newly added Bondspirit server, which is their take on the new experience of the original 9 classes of vanilla in the form of a Classic Plus server. These are all realms and projects that will eventually be released to the public for free later down the line. How do you gain access to these realms in the first place? They'll need testers to get feedback and deliver a quality project at the end of the day. Well, you'll have to either fork over real money to join in on testing or pay with gold as available to you before with the web store and SR items. The price for access on each is 100 DP. Conquest of Azeroth and Wrath of the Lich King are regularly on a 50% sale, so that's more accessible. But the fact of the matter is, because it is gated behind monetary means, it makes it pretty scarce with how many people are actively playing on these servers as a whole. This, in turn, makes it harder to do several types of content to even test things in the first place, let alone reaching specific points where it makes sense to provide feedback. Conquest of Azeroth and Wrath of the Lich King have been in the alpha for many years at this point. It makes zero sense that we are not at a point yet where testing is open for everyone, so you could get adequate testing of both balancing and feedback of how the classes feel. What's the hold up? I would also like to mention that other developing games that are work in progress have done the exact same thing, selling alpha access keys to great negative response. Why should you pay as a customer to test a half-baked project that gives you nothing in return once it actually releases? You don't get anything exclusive by buying the access here. It's literally just giving them free money and labor just for the sole purpose of nothing? I don't even know, dude. Last time I checked, the one testing the actual product's value and price tag is exactly spending your time providing valuable feedback to ultimately refine the product once it releases to the public. Anyhow.
What? Why you say that? What? This is making no Why are you say that?
The next and final segment is pretty juicy, which is the reason why I'm even making this video to begin with. There have been pictures and DMs that allegedly depict gross obfuscation of exploits, bans, leaked staff messages, and more. Let's talk about it. So, There's two images that have been floating around recently. The first is this one. It shows multiple people, which all of them are censored, who got banned for allegedly speaking negatively about the newly released Bronzebeard survey. POV, you criticized Bronzebeard after December 1st. You were banned. This Ascension account has been disabled and is no longer available for use. Dutch, who is the main lead of the Ascension, said, I will propose I refund any donations you've made in the last 180 days in closing your account. I don't think you're a good fit for the team. I suppose that's supposed to be the rest. With many more Dan messages regarding different with different Dan messages from the different Ascension servers. Hey man, you've been removed for a Discord, you're not a good fit. Who said that? Who said that? Man, I don't want to get in trouble, he's been good to us. Just tell me so I can fix that. I guess that's related to the ban. Your account may also be temporarily locked due to too many login attempts. You may try again in a few minutes. But then down here on the right side at the bottom, yo, I don't understand the reason I got banned, to be fair. I was actually asking and didn't understand the reason why that suggestion got closed. If it caused any confusion or suspicion, I'm sorry for that. Which does followed up with, let me know if you would like a refund and have your account closed. I will happily do that for you. Now, what strikes me to believe that this is somewhat believable and not forged is the presence of different languages depicted in the timestamps. Not to mention, some of them have even entirely different backgrounds, which could be associated with using a modded Discord client or settings that change the hue of colors on your PC. In any case, sure, it would be easy to just go change the language of the Discord and mess around with hues and backgrounds, but if we're being completely honest, who would even think to do that and not just stick with one language? And would arguably make even worse statements on Dutch if it was fake in the first place. But since I can't really piece together a full, coherent picture of why and how these people eventually got themselves to a ban, it is pretty hard to conclude anything damning towards the Dutch themselves. Another picture edited the exact same way as the previous one, so 100% from the same person, alleges way worse issues. It says, have you wondered why Ascension devs are so silent? December 23rd, leak from Stat Discord. Around 1,600 Bronzebeard bones so far, 85 to 15 distribution, 45 USD average, not ideal, but still good ROI, which means return on investment. Good metrics, just 1. Sustain pre-launch momentum. 2. Do not acknowledge population issues. 3. Make them feel like you're a part of something. 4. Keep promises vague. There will be an upturn at some point. In my opinion, this is not a good look. Do not acknowledge population issues. I know business is business, but I'll admit that actively having this mindset is just damaging to the player base, and even more so widens the rift between players and developers overall. Having an honest and open communication with the broader audience is paramount to even achieve a successful and long-lasting product, more so also achieving a trust that makes both parties benefit. You build good faith with your players that will support your product. Simple as. No cloak and dagger bullshit. And I assume this is somewhat related to the previous message. It says, Thulis isn't with us anymore. You know full well that was meant to be a private conversation, man. Do you have any idea how damaging this is to us? To the server? I know Thulis was a previous developer, but I also assume the next part that you know full well that was meant to be a private conversation is referring to the metrics. Do you have any idea how damaging this is to us? To the server? I'm not going to lie, this comes off as major entitlement syndrome. Regardless if it's fake or not, do not be mistaken, the business they're doing is by no means professional. It's at best a hobby that luckily pays the bills. No, I'm not even saying this out of spite, it's just the truth. It's a group of people who found each other online, decided to start a project knowingly using a medium based on another company's intellectual property. It doesn't matter how many systems they create, how pretty they make their stuff on, nor how professional they convey themselves. It will always be a fact that they're nothing more but fancy fees. I'm sure that there's actually talented people behind much of the coding, scripting, and all the technical stuff, no questions there. But that's not what the users see. What we're being sold is only the invisible foundation supporting the business. Additionally, as a little fun message someone got by, allegedly criticizing Bronzebeard. I don't know who it was from, so take it with a grain of salt. Or I just made a complete ass of myself because it was, in the end, a fake message. I wouldn't know. That's why I started out saying it was alleged. But with the history and being burned repeatedly, it would not surprise me that this is how they conduct themselves. And to be clear, the only thing you could take out from what I previously said was the derogatory this comes off as major entitlement syndrome, and the rest would remain true. Either way, let's continue. Next part involves an incident I previously didn't know about, which involves the dupe method. If you don't know what duping is, it's in simple terms doing a specific sequence to duplicate, let's say, an item. This makes it so you could majorly exploit the game as a whole, especially economically. As we can see on the screenshot, it's an inventory filled to the brim with high-risk materials and a highlighted picture of 170,000 bizarre tokens, and even the person at GoCat. I just wanted to remember previously how much bizarre tokens cost in real life money. This is an absurd amount and would equate to 65.8 of the largest bizarre token package. This would equate to roughly 2,000 USD. Without the discount. I don't doubt people have that kind of money, but on top of having a filled inventory as well as GoCat, you would not in any way find for materials if you're so wealthy to just buy stuff anyway. Next to the image, there's a screenshot of the message from Kaladin. One of the staff has written, "If the Duke is still active, just let me know and we can work out compensation for it." Compensation for who? All the players that were inadvertently affected by the auction house prices rising because of an export? And what type of compensation? Granted, the person who made this picture could have conveniently left out any details to this. They also claim the dupe exploit is not fixed either. I have no clue how this method came about or how it works, but again, it's a serious issue that has been alleged here. Now to the last part of the picture. It says, Dutch after hiding 0 dupes, it was no big deal, with an in-game screenshot of a conversation between Dutch and an unknown player. Here's what it says. People are saying they do. This is from the person where Dutch responded, it was a small handful of players, it was no big deal, it does not warrant. A message got interjected by the player. You see, no big deal, then release the info and let everyone know. And Dutch followed up from his previous statement, making it a big deal. I've got to get back to work. Have a nice day, man. See, to me, it just sounds like damage control as to not make people aware that even such an issue existed. This is just how business works. I know, but pressing what seems to be a concerned player output, yeah, I'm busy, have a nice day, is the definition of ignorance. And hopefully the person won't make a lot of noise about this. Even more so, I fail to spot any inconsistencies when it comes to if it's been altered or not. Like in the background of the text in the chat box doesn't seem to have been manipulated, where you would normally see obvious signs of manipulation, trying to erase the previous text and insert a fake one. This leads me to believe that unfortunately this duping issue is a real thing that happened, as well as the conversation itself being real. This is of course just my armchair analysis of the picture itself, but really, I'm more than open to be proven all of this is fake. So, what else? Well, not really much. Dutch has responded with the following, it is fake. I don't even use this account for team communication beyond the recent tagging and bugs reports with Blondebeard, but nothing beyond that. I can't trace down where any of the allegations came from, I don't know who receives these penalties, all I can do is present them and give my opinion. It's a he said, she said situation, which is the awful part of the whole thing. But I hope that just by someone covering it, like myself, can lead to a conclusion that will turn out for the better. I like the concept of ascension and I do not want to see it fail. I want to see it succeed and be the best it can be. But with these things being alleged coming to light and with the rising trend of persistent issues, be it financially or balanced, or something else in that nature, it's hard to justify myself supporting the project if it turns out to be true. It goes without saying, do not go out of your way to harass any of the people or the staff of Ascension involved in any of this. It will neither help, produce any results, but annoy and interfere with the situation. I will make a second video following up on this one if I know more or there's a conclusion to this situation. My Discord is your_nightmare. If you have anything that I either missed or don't know, then feel free to reach out. You will remain anonymous, no matter if you're a player, developer, even past developers. As long as it can be validated and proven in good faith, then I will cover it. And it also goes without saying, yes, this is not my real account by any means. Seeing as the Ascension does have been really trigger happy on some bans, I'm not gonna risk my main account or anything related to myself be banned. Simple as. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one.